What happened between us when no one was watching didn't begin with some grand moment or dramatic confession, but in the quiet, ordinary spaces where people usually overlook the significance of what they feel. And even now, when I think back to all the small things that led to that night, I can still feel the softness of his gaze lingering on me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, and the way my breath would catch whenever he stepped just a little too close, the kind of closeness that pretends to be accidental but never really is. And it all began during those long late evenings at the office when most people had already gone home, lights dimmed, the hum of the vending machine the only background noise, and the two of us sitting across from each other pretending to work while the space between us filled with something neither of us dared to name. He would lean back in his chair, running a hand through his hair the way he did when he was almost comfortable enough to say something personal, and I would pretend not to notice even though my eyes always drifted toward him, drawn to the softness in his face when he wasn't wearing that professional mask everyone else saw. And it was in these quiet, unguarded moments that the air between us changed, becoming warmer, slower, charged with a tension that hovered like a secret waiting to be shared. And I didn't know whether I wanted him to speak first or whether I wanted the weight of silence to push us closer, but every time we made eye contact for just a little too long, it felt like a door was opening, even if only an inch at a time. And I remember one particular evening near the end of fall when the building felt emptier than usual, the sky outside heavy with rain, the hallways unusually still, as if the world was intentionally giving us privacy, and he walked over to my desk with a tired smile, asking if I wanted to take a break. And I agreed before he even finished the question, and we ended up in the break room, standing near the window watching the rain streak down the glass in silver lines, the room dim except for the glow of a small overhead light that cast a soft golden hue over everything, and I could feel the warmth of him standing beside me, close enough that our arms almost brushed, close enough that the space felt too tight for two people pretending nothing was happening. And he said something about how long the week had been, but his voice trailed off, drifting instead into a quiet that felt strangely intimate. And when I looked at him, he was already looking at me, not the quick accidental glance but the kind of look someone gives when they've stopped trying to hide what they feel, and my heartbeat quickened because I knew we were teetering on the edge of something that had been building for months, something fragile and overwhelming and impossible to ignore anymore. And he took a slow breath, the kind people take when they're gathering courage. And he told me softly that he noticed the way I looked at him sometimes, and for a second I panicked, not because he was wrong but because he was right, and the truth of it felt like stepping into a warm but unfamiliar doorway. And before I could figure out what to say, he added that he looked at me the same way, maybe even more than I realized, and my breath caught in my throat because hearing it out loud made everything suddenly real, and the silence that followed felt thick, heavy with the awareness that we were standing on the edge of a line we couldn't uncross if either of us stepped forward. But neither of us moved away, not even an inch, and instead he shifted closer, just slightly, just enough that the warmth of his arm brushed mine, and that tiny touch sent a quiet shiver down my spine, not dramatic, not overwhelming, just real, just honest, and I didn't pull away because I didn't want to. And he must have seen something in my eyes because he whispered my name so gently it felt like a question, a question I'd been waiting to answer for months without knowing it. And even though no one else was there, even though the world outside kept moving, it felt like everything froze in that moment, and I think he realized it too because his voice dropped lower, softer, and he told me he didn't want to pretend anymore, and I didn't either. And when he reached for my hand, slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted, it felt natural, inevitable, like the world had been waiting for us to close the distance, and my fingers curled into his without hesitation, the warmth of his palm steady and grounding, and for a moment we just stood there like that, two people finally acknowledging what had been simmering between us for so long. And I could hear his breath when he stepped even closer, the kind of closeness where every small movement becomes amplified, and though nothing explicit happened, the quiet intensity of that closeness felt more intimate than anything I'd ever experienced, as if the room itself leaned in